here to tell you how to make some yeast rolls. So, first we're going to take 132 grams of flour. We're just going to pour that in a bowl. And then take your yeast, 6 grams of yeast with 75 milliliters of water. Just dump the yeast in there. Let that sit for a bit. And then we'll continue with this. We're going to take 6 grams of milk powder, pour that in. 6 grams of sugar. 10 grams of eggs. You can get 10 grams by beating an egg and then weighing it out. 3 grams of salt. And 12 grams of soft butter. We use soft butter here instead of cold butter because it makes it easier to work with. It doesn't stay clumpy in the mixture. And then you're just going to take this. You can use your hands if you want. You can use really whatever you want to mix this, as long as it is mixed. The type of flour we're using is bread flour because we're making bread. The type of flour matters if the gluten, for the gluten structure. Otherwise, if we use, say, pastry flour, the bread wouldn't be as stringy, and you're not going to get that nice, delicious gluten network. And then for the yeast, I'm just going to mix that up. Make sure it's nice and mixed. You want to make sure you're using lukewarm water when you do this because the yeast activates inside it, because we're using active dry yeast. If you're using instant, it shouldn't matter too much. If you're using compressed, that's a whole different story. You shouldn't be using compressed. Just pour that right in. We use dry milk powder in this so that it doesn't get too wet, but at first you will find that it is very wet, obviously. We just poured a lot of water. You're going to want to make sure you try and get all of the dough. At first, we use a bowl because it keeps everything contained. But if you would just want to use the counter, that's fine too. You want to try to get all of the flour in your bowl. Your dough is fairly moist, so it should soak up all of it. Once you're at a certain point, you'll find that it's not quite sticking to your hand as nearly as much as it was. That's about when you can take it out of the bowl. Well, when I prefer to take it out of the bowl, you can do this on the counter if you want, if you really, really want. We can discard the bowl. So now we're on to kneading. Kneading is a form of mixing, essentially. Essentially what we're doing is mixing everything in, making sure it gets everywhere. But it also works the gluten network and creates the structure that we want. And it allows for air to be trapped inside of the yeast. You should also have a small thing of flour nearby so that you can dust your counter if your dough is too wet. You just want to keep mixing, keep kneading. Essentially what you do is you take it and you fold it in half and then you press it in. That's all you gotta do. You can use a stand mixer if you want. I'm not using enough dough to use a stand mixer, so, and plus you don't get to see the action. So, you might be wondering, when is a good time for you to stop kneading? Well, that's when you take your dough, take a chunk off, and you just start spreading it out. If it starts ripping before you can see the shadow of your fingers through it, you haven't kneaded it enough. This one needs a little bit more. But it was almost there. I'm gonna use a little bit more flour because it just keeps sticking. So for the next steps, you're gonna wanna make sure you have some egg wash nearby, some oil, probably a cloth if you're gonna use oil for lubricating the compartment. I'm gonna check for the window pane again. That didn't work out. There we go, that's perfect. Okay, so once you're done with that, then you take it, you're gonna have these supplies nearby, or at least a bowl. And what you're gonna do, take some oil, not too much, put some in, take a paper cloth or a towel, and just wipe around. What you're doing this for is because you're gonna put the dough in, and it makes it easier for the dough to come out. It makes it so it doesn't stick to the sides, and it's not as much of a mess to clean up later. So there's that. Your dough goes right in, and you're gonna wanna cover it. I have a cover for this, but you can use Saran wrap if you have it. And so you're gonna put that in the proofer. You're gonna put that in the proofer. And that's gonna go for probably at least half an hour, depending on how things go. But you might end up waiting, say, an hour 15, which might mess you up a little in the day, but you know, you should probably make sure you have time. And when it comes out, it's gonna be like this. It's all puffy, kind of jiggles a little bit, and you know it's right when it's about twice the size of the original size. This is a little bit more, so it's a little bit overproof, but it's not too bad, so we're just gonna keep going. So you just peel that out, do that right there. And then we go on to punch it down. Now you don't want to actually punch it, because especially if you have a hard counter below, because that's just going to hurt. You just want to push your fingers into it. And what you're doing is essentially just popping the bubbles that you just made, because that's what yeast does when it sits in warm environments. It makes bubbles by eating the flour and protein, and that's good, because that's what we want. So normally you would let this set for about 5 minutes. I am not, because I'm just gonna keep going and show you how to do this. Usually you let it set because you just worked it again, and I didn't work it too much, so I'm happy. So what you do, If it's sticking to the counter, by the way, use a little bit more flour. You take your dough knife, and cut it out. You want about 1.5 inch diameter rolls. And some people like to roll like this. That's fine. Some people like to smush it into the counter, and that makes nice rolls, and that also frees up your other hand to do the same thing. We're just gonna go ahead and cut through these. Squish them all together. If you want them to be about the same size, you're just gonna take pieces off of others, and share. Otherwise, people are gonna end up with small rolls, and nobody likes a small roll. So that's about right. 2. 4. 6. I got 6 out of this. If you're using the same measurements as I am, you should too. Now you can have a pan. You can either have parchment paper laid down, or you can put down a little bit more oil and spread that out again. Either way, you just need to make sure that there's something there so that the rolls aren't gonna stick later on. Because once you put these on, they're not coming off again. And what you're gonna do with these is you're gonna put these in the proofer again, because a good baker lets his bread rise twice. It adds flavor and just makes everything much better. So these are gonna be them proofed, or just about proofed. Twice the size again. Twice the size again. It's a little hard to tell when they're round, but I'm sure you will be able to eyeball it. This is egg wash. Egg wash is the easiest way to do it. Just take an egg, crack it open, put some cream in it, about a tablespoon. That's all you need. I have a brush here. Just take the brush it over the top. And the reason we do this is because it makes a nice golden color on the top. If you don't do this, that's fine. It's not necessary, but they're just not gonna look as tasty as they could, even if you do manage to bake them perfectly. And sometimes that's all that matters. Sometimes that is what decides the winner in a competition, just a little bit extra. Just put a little bit more effort in. Okay, now that those are all set, they're all proofed, you're gonna take them and you're gonna throw them in the oven at 350 degrees. You're gonna wanna set that for about 12 to 15 minutes. And once they come out, golden brown, crispy, delicious. They should sound pretty heavy, but when you break into them, it looks nice. This is the work of your kneading.